Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Kyle Wangsness, who is a solution architect at OnLogic. Since joining the team in 2018, Kyle has focused on empowering companies to solve complex technology challenges at the edge, encompassing both software and hardware by leveraging OnLogic's industrial computing solutions and its robust partner ecosystem. Through his work with customers, partners, vendors, and the team at OnLogic, Kyle gets to feed his passion for making complex technologies such as AI at the edge and device orchestration easier to understand and deploy. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite. Always happy to talk shop.
How do you describe to lay people what it is that you do?
That's a good question because I think sometimes my job title can mean many different things to many different people. When I used to be a sales engineer here and I would go talk to people outside of OnLogic, they would be like, okay, great. So you're a salesperson. I'm like, well, not exactly. I'm more of a sales engineer. I work with the customers on the technical only. They're like, okay, so you're an architect. I'm like, well, no, that's what our product team does. And so it was always kind of funny because I kind of like to say I do a little bit of everything. But really at the end of the day, my focus is to work with partners, work with the technologies we have in house to bring kind of that sales experience, but also bring the problem solving from a technology perspective and then interconnect that partner ecosystem. So I'm not necessarily engaged on a day-to-day basis with accounts every single day, but I still am solving problems constantly and working with partners and figuring out exactly what are the new things we need to be looking at to achieve business results.
And how is it that you got here? Like, what's your background? Did you go to engineering school? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And this is usually one that I get a lot of, let's say, looks for. So I have a business degree from University of Vermont. I kind of stumbled into the industrial space. I had a little bit of sales experience. I knew how to build a computer. And there just happened to be this little company in Vermont at the time called Logic Supply, now OnLogic. And I met them at a career fair. So I ended up coming to Logic Supply at the time as a salesperson, really was more focused on the technology. I liked how things work, talking to people about their application. And then from there, moved through a couple of different roles until I got to here. Being a solution architect, getting to work with people across the org to really make things possible for those customers.
So my daughter graduated from University of Vermont, so I've got a little bit of a special interest in that. Did you grow up in Vermont?
No, I'm from New Jersey. So I had been there for skiing and Westover at Mount Snow. And it was the biggest school I applied to. So it was 12,500 people at the time. And the smallest one was only 2,000. So I was like, okay, well, I have no idea what I want to do. So business degree sounds like it's very general purpose. So I didn't know really what the market held. And I didn't even know what a sales engineer or solution architect was when I was in college.
But you got to go skiing. Smells of skiing.
Yep. Oh, skiing was great.
So tell me a little bit more about OnLogic. You mentioned a little bit here in your first question, but tell me a little bit more about OnLogic, how it began and how the company has evolved.
What I would say is it's a constant evolution of what we've been able to do. So we started, back in 2002, 2003, just focused on selling computer parts. We're in the e-commerce boom. People want parts for computers. What had then happened is there was an order. Someone wanted a fully built system. So the co-founders at the time, Lisa and Roland Coronafeld, they put together I think it was hundreds of computers in their Boston apartment or their Boston house. And what ended up happening is they were like, wow, there's a lot of money to be made as a VAR. So really kind of the evolution from there till, let's say, mid 2010s was, just bringing stuff together, building pieces, sending out systems people wanted to order. They were one of the first to really look at the configurability on an e-commerce platform and say, here, spec to your needs, we'll build it out. And so, as things evolved and, we started looking at the industrial space, which was still fairly nascent from a computing perspective, right? Like PLCs have been around forever at this point, but the idea of an IPC in kind of what we think of it today as a fanless small form factor computer was still very nascent. So as we started to do more like chassis design in-house and more tailored to specific customers, what we realized is, hey, we got to bring this in-house. So we took that next step, actually really around when I started, to have our own systems with our own motherboards, everything from the ground up designed by us, so we could really tailor that product. And so that's just evolved until we're at the point now where the vast majority of our products are to some degree designed in-house. It's really great to have seen the company evolve over the years, change, and really address what the market needs. Along the way, we changed our name. We used to be Logic Supply. We are now OnLogic. There's a lot of reasons for that. We're not a supply company. We make solutions. I think part of it is also there was a company with a very similar name that sold plumbing equipment. So we'd get regular calls being like, hey, can I get an 8-foot section of schedule 80, 2-inch diameter? And we're like, nope, wrong company, buddy. So it was definitely an evolution of the brand back in, I think that was 2019.
Yeah, so CSA often gets calls for people looking for the Chimney Sweep Association. So I feel that. So what kind of suppliers do you partner with?
I think it really depends on what suppliers mean. When I look at that, what I think of the whole ecosystem, right? So obviously we have partnerships with the big semiconductor manufacturers, upstream partners for board manufacturer. We're a very high up partner with Intel, obviously a core part of our technology stack. But, the part of the partnership that I work with really is that idea of we need to go farther. The market has changed so much in like the last 5 years. And in the industrial space, it's kind of interesting because we're kind of addressing the same problems just because companies are moving sometimes so slowly. The digital transformation questions I was answering in 2019 are still the same questions now. But, to solve that, we need the right software stack. So from everything from operating system support with suppliers, whether it's Red Hat, Canonical, but also the software from the ISVs, the independent software vendors, to do partnerships with inductive automation for SCADA, partnerships with, device orchestration platforms like Zadata, provide a really seamless experience for customers onboarding devices, all the way to, very purpose-built stuff for, robotics management or remote management out of band. There's so many technologies out there that customers are looking for. And that goes back to that shift, right? You are no longer, as a device supplier, part of just a bill of materials. They want you to figure out what the problem is and how to solve it. So definitely seeing a huge shift and the need for companies to partner across the ecosystem, from the development, from the tool side, then from the implementation side with integrators, is really key to how a modern computer company works.
Is there any industry or product that you specialize in?
I would say, for OnLogic, we've got a ton of core verticals, but I would say the most important are kind of our top three. So manufacturing, that's everything from discrete and process, logistics, material handling systems, and energy is very key to us. Systems across manufacturing could everything from, SCADA and DCS all the way to machine vision systems. So it really runs the gamut, but I would say that's our core fundamental market, along with, energy and utility. For myself, that's kind of always been my area. I would say I don't skew towards much as retail and medical, even though we do offer those segments. I more have the expertise in the automation and the industrial space, just because that's what I was able to really latch onto, figure out. And that's the thing I talk about every single day I'm here.
What do you expect from OnLogic in the next year or two?
So I think for us, as an organization, right, the market has changed so much in the last couple years, really. It's now about providing that better user experience. There's a expectation built up that the hardware works reliably. Now it's more a conversation about, okay, these companies who've been experimenting at the edge, how are they actually going to deploy thousands of these? Some people figured it out. Some people want off-the-shelf solutions for that. So really refining that user experience is where we're going to have to go. Broader scope, we talk market conditions. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around AI. I always like to say, we've been doing this forever. Modern vision systems based on deep learning. This is something we all understand very well. I think as the technology evolves, it's more about the optimization of the models versus just developing that new. But the other thing that's become more paramount, I think, especially in the last 2 years, has been this idea of security. And this ties into this idea of the whole solution, right? So stuff like trusting your supply chain, being able to ensure from when the device leaves the manufacturer's location to when it first boots, it's entirely secure. To simple stuff, secure boot, tamper resistance. Like these are all core things that as we see all these cyber attacks happening, you look at some of the things that have been happening, I think there's a little bit of a complacency in the market today. And I don't think we've had that watershed moment. We like to talk about big cyber attacks, but most of the ones that we think of recently are, ransomware. I think from a really disruptive to critical infrastructure, that's what's going to say, beyond just the NIST standards for cryptography that were published, 3 months ago, it's going to be when Congress moves in the United States, that's just going to be the way we do things. Just like if you're doing anything in the industrial space, you're following OSHA guidelines. I think it's going to get to that point sooner rather than later. So the industry needs to focus on those core concepts now so that they can be experts.
We all know the stranglehold the talent shortage has on business, which means this is no time to trifle when it comes to staying competitive in the Thunderdome that is the labor market. That's where the CSIA Salary and Benefits Survey comes in. This benchmarking resource, formerly known as a Talent Retention Toolbox, provides comprehensive compensation information for dozens of SI industry job titles. It also provides insight into benefits like retirement programs, medical benefits, PTO, bonuses, and more to provide you with a holistic picture. You'll also get high-level HR analytics like industry turnover rates and recruiting sources. Here's how it works. The survey will be open in January, and you will have until the end of February to enter your data. The final report will be available soon after, mid-March or so, but only to CSIA members who input their data. And while the salary survey provides valuable insights into how your talent cost structure compares to others, the CSIA Pulse program carries this benefit further by providing a quarterly look at how efficiently you are deploying your team. Benchmark your operations against your peers to focus your efforts on the areas that will deliver the most value. To learn more, visit www.controlsys.org/salary-survey and www.controlsys.org/CSIA-Pulse. Get armed with the data you need to stay competitive today. Are there any other things that you're expecting the company's going to be doing in the near future?
We'll keep releasing very cool products. We're expanding into new markets. We're refining other product lines. It's really about creating new systems that are going to meet the needs of some of these more niche use cases. And I think as edge computing continues to expand, there's going to be new things we need to address. But for me, looking at it from an application side, it's really about that optimization of the AI and how does that flow into, your existing MES, SCADA, DCS stack. Very controlled systems, typically closed networks. As people want to do all this stuff, how do we do it securely? How do we do it scalably?
What do you say is unique about how you approach a project?
So if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said customization. The market's changed a little bit and everything's customizable now. It seems like you can't buy anything off the shelf anymore. But really, when we approach a product as an organization, not only is it that customization, historically, we were the first ones to do it. So we've been able to refine it for years and years and years. But it's really that idea of you have to be able to understand the total scope of what the person's doing and not really focus as a hardware vendor on just selling the hardware. I think that's a fundamental mistake a lot of people make. We talk about the user experience and being able to trust people who you buy from. I think that's really important beyond that, just because I think a lot of companies, and I know a number of integrators, they look to drive that total BOM cost down above all else, and maybe sometimes aren't thinking about the total cost of ownership. So really being that holistic approach towards hardware selection and understanding what are their needs. That's really how we be unique. We want you to work with us and have a great experience one time, but also every single time you come back and talk, whether it's to support, whether it's to our engineering group, whether it's to our sales group, like all of those people need to be trusted by that customer.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about that. Why do you think customers return to you project after project?
One of the things I've always preached, right, and going back to the idea of TCO, is the idea of product quality. These are critical systems. I've had customers tell me their HMIs, right, they have them deployed in, let's say, the Permian Basin in Texas. They're deployed at like a wellhead, pumping oil out of the ground. And their project manager told me, like, look, if this HMI goes down, it's an 8-hour drive from the nearest place where I can fly a plane in. So I'm not doing that. That costs a lot of money. So you got to ensure this thing is super reliable. Being able to back up quality standards, I think, is one thing. At the end of the day, people buy from who they like. That's the oldest thing about sales. The first thing I learned is really it's building that relationship and trust and being able to say, hey, this is what I'm said I'm going to do, and I'm going to go do it. I think things like that of being able to build trust, the fact that when you call our support team, you're not going to sit through a phone tree for 20 minutes. You call them, they have a direct number, and someone, real person who's going to be not a support tech at like a call center, but someone who's been working their entire career on the production line with systems, troubleshooting issues. That's how you build trust with people, is creating a really good experience and making sure that you stand behind your products.
Give me an example of a project that was super challenging and what you did to solve the customer's problem.
I think one of the things that can be challenging from a hardware perspective is when you do get into this new sales motion or this new way the market addresses problems of, you need to understand all these pieces and coordinate between different vendors. So we did another project on a similar application on a wellhead where they were looking at saying, okay, well, we need these servers, we need high availability. So, being able to fail over if one system fails, the other system would immediately take over as a hot spare. We worked to develop a solution in the market with our partners that could drive that to the customer, but then also addressing the business challenges. We were able to address the total cost of ownership of the solution and say, hey, actually, this software package with this computer is actually way cheaper than what you were going to buy anyways. So I think really from like a modern perspective for me, it's navigating not just working with the customer on the hardware, but it's also making sure they're having a good experience with everybody in the ecosystem, right? We win together, we lose together. And I think that as the market evolves, the people who can do that are going to be the winners.
Advice would you give a prospective customer researching you versus a competitor?
Picking the right product. I would always encourage someone to go look at a couple options, but seeing what they put in front of you. Do you think that's the right solution? Are vendors being honest with you? Can you trust them? There have been many a times where I've seen someone be told that they need something. I think HMI panels are a great example where they're like, oh yeah, you need all this bells and whistles and this much RAM, this much storage. And it's like, well, hold on. Especially for ignition, let's say. I'm like, okay, well, do you have any complex JavaScript happening in the background? No, we don't. Okay, do you have any weirdness around regulatory requirements? Not really. Okay, well, this one is perfectly fine and it's going to be cheaper than the one that we tried to match or equivalent. So I would say, look for a vendor who's willing to do that. Look for a vendor who's going to give you the right solution and not the one that they've got the spiff on, I would say. And, how is it to work with them? Are they responsive? Do they have quality standards to back that up? Do they have the right certs? Not to go off on a tangent, but I think that's one thing people don't think about enough is like, well, my regulatory guy, that's his problem. Yeah, but when you try to ship 50 of these into South Korea, is it going to get stopped in customs and turned around? I've seen that happen many a time. So we tend to take a very in-depth approach to requirements gathering and saying like, look, we are not just trying to sell you and then get you out the door. We want to help you deploy this and we want to help you for the next 5-10 years.
What trends and challenges are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
To me, really is this idea of as the market changes, there's a different idea of what skill sets are needed to be in the modern industrial space. I think there's a lot of IT tools. We hear containers, we hear virtual machines, we hear soft PLCs. It's no longer enough to just be comfortable with the tools your organization uses. Companies are looking for you to be able to integrate a complete package that maybe it doesn't adhere to the traditional operational technology buyer mindset. So one of the partnerships we have now is with Codesys, and I think that's a really cool example of like how the market's changing, right? Adopting a standardized, whether it's structured text, whether it's any of the other IEC 61131-3 languages, that can be integrated into modern microservice architectures. Then the challenge becomes, okay, well, if you're a PLC engineer and you have no experience in any of this, that can be an issue down the line. We all need to be looking at what's that next technology I need to understand and learn. And it's something I keep seeing, like every single year, this gets more and more priority of the industry's changing. No more closed networks. It's no longer very vendor specific stuff. It's let's make open standards. Let's create new things that are cool. And the technologies and the tool sets and the skills, that needs to change.
Do you think that's going to be super disruptive?
I think that's part of the disruption. I think as the market can adjust, there's people coming out of school today, I think are going to have different skill sets than people like, let's say 10, 15 years ago. It really is changing. And I'm seeing like my colleagues who are, let's say earlier in their careers at large nationwide integrators, they're really experimenting with new tools, new ways of thinking, learning different skill sets that they would have not thought about 5 years ago. So I think people are adjusting. I've been doing this tool for 20 years and this is how I know to do it, right? So no matter where you are in your career, you need to always be thinking about learning new tools and learning what is the new thing that someone's going to come down and ask me about.
So switching topics a little bit, let's talk about the relationship between OnLogic and CSIA. Why do you think OnLogic chose to join CSIA?
The big thing for us really is that trust, building trust and building community, knowing that when we're working with a member, that they're committed to doing quality work for the customer. It also really helps us understand the challenges of the industry better. What can we be doing? What can we look at? What new technologies, what new products can we develop that are going to be a good fit for the integrator market? We didn't necessarily touch on it, but one of the things we did when we launched our new HMI was we sat down with a bunch of integrators and said, what do you want? What features, what screen sizes? Is serial important? Is DIO important? What do you want? Because you're going to be the ones to buy it anyways. So it's easier for us to just ask you what you want to buy.
What's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
Besides invest in NVIDIA and Bitcoin, related to automation, of course, I would say feel free to get outside your comfort zone early. I kind of took that first plunge about a year in when I was like, hey, all these people are talking about SCADA and ignition. I'm going to go learn this thing. But I think it would have been helpful to do a little bit of a deeper dive at the time on, AI and relearning Python. I think I would have said, here, sit down, go on W3 schools, figure it out. Because in 6 years, you're going to be doing a lot more of this. So it'd be helpful if you had a better fundamental now. But, if I had to do it over again, really, I would do it the exact same way. It's been a ton of fun working on automation.
If you could choose a completely different career, what would it be and why?
So going back to college, I had two choices, really. I was going to either go for, a general degree, business degree, something like that. I actually did start in comp sci. I think probably going back, I would be doing something with robotics. I love, working with vision systems. I love working with cool new stuff. So I probably would have done robotics engineering instead of business degree if I could do a different career, completely different. But I have no regrets getting a business degree and getting into engineering through industrial automation.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Cole or OnLogic, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Cole, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also really help the show by leaving a review and sharing with colleagues. We're all just slaves to the logarithm now, so I gotta ask. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.